Boker Tov, good morning everybody. This is Avi Abelo here in the eternal and ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, the land of Israel, in our eternal and undivided capital, Jerusalem. Very, very special and interesting guest talking about a crucial issue. Simcha Rothman, Boker Tov.
Hi, Boker Tov.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
People who follow me know that I have been vocal about the judicial coup that has been taking place in Israel for decades, that the Supreme Court Justice former Supreme Court Justice Aaron Barak started and has been pulling the strings behind the scenes for years. You have much more information than me on all this and what's really going on, details, why it's important. So first, tell us, who are you and what is this organization that you set up, Meshilut?
Meshilut.
And why is it so important?
Okay, so I'm a lawyer. So that's
why he has more information than I do.
That's a problem. In Israel, there's so many lawyers, so it's not so unique. But I'm a lawyer, and 7 years ago, we started Meshilut, the organization that aimed to change the problem. As you said, the problem is already taken place since the 80s. So it's not a new problem, but it's a new solution. And Meshilut tries to offer a new solution. In the past 7 years, what we have done is research to figure out where the problem lies exactly, because everyone can say, oh, the Supreme Court does this, does that, but you need to fix the system, you need information, you need details, exactly the thing that, because we discovered very interesting issues that we didn't think of when we started, because of this complicated and behind the scenes operation. So that's what we've done, research, and then trying to educate the public and the elected officials on the problems and on the solutions. We also try to figure out solutions from around the world, from Israel, and get the public awareness in social media, in Twitter and Facebook. We're trying, in the website, we're trying to make this happen. And when everything is falling into the place, and a minister or a Knesset member wants the solution, we will help him or her draft the solution. Either it will be a bill of legislation, it will be something in the government, either it will be just a legal opinion that can help him to solve the problem. So that's what we did in the last 7 years. We've seen some success. We start seeing walking towards a solution. We know that for the first time, I would say ever, restrained judge was appointed, what you would call a conservative judge in the U.S.
Why do you call him restrained? Kilo restrained, not an active judge? That's what you mean? Not an activist
the
judge.
opposite of
So
activism.
you're calling him restrained. Conservative. I got you.
I say, in the U.S. you would say conservative.
Right.
In Israel, conservatism is not so
not
much...
the same.
It's not even not the same. The term really does not exist. We're trying to introduce conservatism into Israeli judiciary.
Interesting.
But the term really does not exist. We are trying to build it. That we are doing it through Meshilut and through other ways of operation. But we're talking about if you're an activist or restrained. I don't like this term, and I really want to introduce the conservative, but people in Israel don't really understand what does it mean to be a conservative judge. So that's what we are doing. And the most important thing is that people really don't understand how thorough the legal establishment, and it's not only Bagatz, it's not only the Supreme Court, and it's the Supreme Court and the legal advisory, and like it's clothing from all over,
and the prosecutor's office, and the Department of Supreme Court petitions that's supposed to defend the government, etc., etc.
Exactly, and it's all working somehow together. And when we talk about, you spoke about Aaron Barak, and the problem really started with Aaron Barak, and maybe a little bit with his predecessor
well.
Shamgar, who was also he was basically ruining the idea that you need to have a legal standing to go to the Supreme Court. He accepted people without legal standing to go, and you can petition to the court in Israel on everything. And so people don't really understand how this problem. And people ask me, why do you talk about Aaron Barak? Aaron Barak is already not in the Supreme Court for the past 15 years.
Right.
Why are you still...
That's old news, Simcha. Why bring him up?
Yeah, it's old news. And I was asked this question, and I told, you know what, bring me someone, one person, in all the Israeli legal establishment, one person that would say what Aaron Barak did to the Supreme Court of Israel is an abomination, is something you shouldn't ever have considered to do. That this idea, as you said, in the US you talk about conservative judges, you have 5-4, 4-5, 6-3, it's a split, it's a debate, people talk about it. Okay, what kind of a judge will you be, right? In Israel there is no debate. If you are a part of the legal establishment in Israel, it means you are a supporter of Aaron Barak ideas of jurisprudence, how the court should work. And that's the real problem, that's what we want to change. So that's why it's so important. Aaron Barak is the person, but it's also the method that it's so extreme. It exists in other places in the world, but it's always an extreme end. In Israel, everyone is in this extreme end, and there is small pockets of resistance outside of the establishment. But in the establishment, you cannot find someone speaking with his face. You can see who speaks. You can see people write secretly. But if you want people to stand in front of a camera and stand in front of a microphone and say what Aaron Barak did is not a good thing to the Israeli justice system.
So I want to take you a step back, because I've actually been following this for years due to my own political activism in Israel, trying to improve the system. And I'm going to say something which I believe you would agree with. I don't always have the facts to back it up, even though I know enough, but I want to hear your feedback of it. And again, when I tell people, listen, we have to write for the right parties in Israel to make the changes necessary to better Israel, but the one thing stopping Israel from truly making the changes necessary to enforce the policies we are voting in, if we vote Likud or we vote right-wing, well, if we don't make the changes to the judicial system, we can't make the policy changes we want at the executive or legislative level. Because whether it is the attorney generals of offices telling the ministers, no, sorry, that won't pass Bagatz, I'm not going to let you bring this bill onto the floor, or even it gets to the floor, then you have all these organizations that, for whatever reason, only in Israel, even though they have no connection to a case, they're allowed to petition the Supreme Court, and then because of the makeup, which is more Aaron Barak, activist judges, they knock down every single policy or law that's even passed that doesn't go according to their medidati, what's that, whatever, all their legal mumbo-jumbo language. So, again, from my perspective, from what I know, and I don't have all the facts to show it, and I guess I'm looking for you to say it, it's so hard to convince the public of this, that, yes, the only way we are seriously going to have a policy that we want when we vote in a right-wing government is if we make the changes that will allow the separation of powers be equalized once again, because right now the judicial coup is that the judicial system, including all of the sectors, have usurped the powers of the executive and the legislative. And my problem is, not enough people understand, because there's so much out there and so much hypocrisy that people don't even want to accept or believe.
So that's one of the main reasons that I wrote my book, Mifleget Bagatz.
Let's show it. Okay, so here's the book that Simcha wrote, Mifleget Bagatz. Again, for those who do not know Hebrew, Miflaga is a party, Bagatz is the Supreme Court. So Simcha is trying to make a joke out of a very sad situation that the Supreme Court has turned itself into a political party in a sense.
And the English name is the ruling party of Bagatz. The ruling party of the it's actually the ruling party in Israel for the last 40 years is not the Knesset.
Right, meaning no matter who we vote in, this is the party that ends up setting the tone and knocking down laws or allowing laws that go according to their policy, not according to the people of the democracy of Israel.
Exactly. So the book starts with one simple example, that people that know what happened in Israel, did not really understood what's going on. It's the housing prices. I know a lot of people, even from the U.S., from abroad, they care about housing prices in Israel because a lot of people have an extra house in Israel, right? And the prices went up and up and up in the last decade, in the last 15 years, right? And why? Why did the prices went up? No one knows. There was a state controller report trying to figure out what were the reasons for this price that's going up, the price rise that's going up, and people don't remember that in the 90s, Israel accepted million olim from Russia, from the former Soviet Union, right? So everyone who knows basic economics knows that if you have more demand, the prices should go up, right? And in this decade, even though we had a million more people in a very small country, it's not like in the U.S., one more million, it's a year, right? Here, a million, it's like, whoa, it's a quarter, a fifth. Well, it's a big number. And they're all coming and they need houses.
Right, so a population of 6 million, all of a sudden 1 million.
1 million extra.
To our
it's
total
a lot.
population of the country.
It's a lot.
Right.
And the prices went down. The prices did not go up in this decade. Why? Because the system in Israel, we have a lot of problem with the way the land laws in Israel are built, but the supply, we had more supply than the demand. We built a lot more supply, and the prices went down, even though we had a million more people. And the decade after, without this big aliyah wave coming, the prices went up. And the reason is because the Supreme Court said, oh, you cannot have more land being changed, rezoned from agriculture land to building land. And the reasons were extreme, I would say, progressive, left-wing. You can choose your term exactly, but it was because of a petitioner coming from the extreme left, people that their ideology, the written ideology, said that anything Israel does to the land is something bad because we took all this land from the Arabs and we need to return the land to the Arabs.
And you're talking about building in what people call within the 1967 borders.
Yeah, I'm not talking about
Israel proper, which we hate using that language, but that not
I'm talking
Samaria.
Building near Tel Aviv. I'm talking in the north, in the south, near Modi'in.
I never even knew this piece of information.
So and these people said, oh, you cannot rezone the land from agriculture to building because the reason was it's not distributive justice. Because when you rezone land, the people who gain from it are the people from the moshav or from the kibbutz that the land was built, and it should go to the Arabs one side, and it should go to the people in the hayarot pituach. What was development? Like people who are. So that was the claim. It was extreme left-wing organization that appealed to the Supreme Court and canceled the decision of the government on this land. This stopped land development from 2002 to 2016. This simple decision that the court did. Now, what you do when you have a cut on the supply? Prices are rising, right? So the prices, a major reason. There are other reasons, but this is, I think, the major reason that the prices went up is this decision made by the court with zero. That's the problem with zero accountability. If you would have known that, if a prime minister would take this decision, you would vote him out.
Exactly.
You would say, what a stupid decision did you take? Did you think that if you will not rezone land, that suddenly people in the Negev will become richer? No, they will pay more they will become poorer, right? But that's the decision the court did, and we did not pay the public price.
Right.
So this book is also to make this clear to people. Accountability for the court, and accountability for the legal advisors, and accountability for the whole justice system, it will make better Israel. Whatever your political views are, the left, if your goal is to disrupt Israel, okay, that's one thing. But if your goal is anything but disrupting Israel, you wouldn't want the Supreme Court dealing with the land laws in Israel. You want a legislator, you want to fix it, you want to rethink it, revisit it. Something that you cannot do once you have a ruling by the Supreme Court.
So since you already brought this is something new. I never heard that, a Supreme Court ruling that is one of the reasons for the housing, the consistent housing prices, the rise in housing prices. I want to ask you about another one, which I think will talk to people, if that's okay with you. And I'm talking about the illegal migrants. Okay, from the little I know, the Israel's Parliament, Knesset, consistently passed laws to allow the states to be able to deal within the law with illegal migrants. That most of them did not have, what's the word?
They're not refugees.
They're not refugees. They were coming running away for economic reasons, and the Supreme Court knocked down the law. And the Supreme Court, and again, it went back to the Parliament to rewrite it according to whatever reason. And again, the new law knocked down the law. And for this reason, Israel is stuck with, I don't know how many, 100,000 illegal migrants. With even though those who really need asylum according to law, and there is a process, can receive that, but majority of them are illegal, and the reason the state of Israel cannot deal with them, and each time an agreement was even made with African countries to take them back, it was the Supreme Court, because it was petition, that stopped the government from even enforcing agreements made with foreign countries. Can you go more into that detail for people to understand that as well?
So you described it very good, but again, people don't remember or don't think about it. That migration is a worldwide problem. It's not. Israel did not invent the wheel, as you say in Hebrew. I don't know if you say it in English too.
No, yeah.
But Israel did not. It's not unique to Israel. And in Australia, for example, they had a really big problem with illegal immigrants, and they changed the law, and they built a place to check the asylum seekers, but did not let the asylum. It's easier for them because they don't have a land border with anyone. It's easier for them. But the second they made their immigration laws tighter, and they found a solution that people that come and claim that they are asylum seekers do not immediately go within the country and within the society and blend and mix, and then create the problem of slums and create the problem of low income citizens that are being pushed out of work and other problems that are again worldwide. The second they changed their law, the problem stopped and went to other places. Either went to other places in Africa or in Asia or in the US or in Europe. But the ability to build a wall of a law, not a physical wall. We also built a physical wall who created a better solution. But the ability to create a law that says, stop, you cannot enter. It's not automatically that you are getting all the benefits by just passing the border. This is a very important way to deal with this problem. And Israel tried 3 times in 3 consecutive years to pass laws, and it passed right and left. And some of the laws passed with 80 Knesset members supported. It's not something.
All 3 passed with vast majority. You're saying
most of them. Some of them were, but most of them passed. And the court just said no, it's not okay. And it's not okay not because there is some higher law that prevents it. The court just decided like that. 36 months to hold them in a place until their asylum request is being processed. No, that's not good enough. It's preventing them from developing their how did they say tachbivim?
Their hobbies.
Yeah, that's what the court says. If
was their language because they're in an asylum.
If you hold them in a place, again, it's not a prison. It's not. It's a place that they should be there. They're getting food. If they are running away from and looking for asylum, and they're getting a roof over their head and food and something to do with their time, what more can they ask? You're running away for your life. You should be thankful. No, but if you're looking for job and you want to send money back home, that will be harsh for you. No, the court says no. If you put them there and it's somewhere in the Negev, they cannot pursue their hobbies. That the court words. So 36 months is too much. Why? Because the court decided 20 months too much, 18 months too much, 12 months okay. Why? Who knows?
Right, and again, the point you're making, they're not using any law to make their decisions.
Yeah, it's just. I think that it's 36 months is better, is not good, and 12 months is okay, and there is no higher law. We don't have a constitution saying that putting people in this kind of a camp until their asylum request is being processed is illegal. It's non-constitutional. There is nothing. It's like a vague idea that the court decides. Oh, I think it's too much. Why? And of course, because of this problem, the southern parts of Tel Aviv became a place no one wants to live in.
Right.
The low-income Israeli citizens that live there, their life became hell, and the court really did not care. Again, zero accountability. When you talk to the court and they say, "Oh, we feel for you." This I represented in one of the cases. I represented people from South Tel Aviv, and I went to the court. We feel for you. It's sad, but we cannot do anything. Okay. So who should solve our problems? You make the problems, and when the government and the Knesset try to solve the problem, you make it worse.
Right. No, you've made a very important point. The illegal migrant issue in Israel, which is creating havoc for Israelis in those low-income communities, the hell that they're living with is the fault of the Supreme Court for not allowing the government to come up with the legal solutions necessary, and it's just a problem that festers and it's creating more and more
problems.
And
when you compare Israeli solutions to solutions that, I started with Australia, but also other countries, when you compare the solutions, you would say, okay, I would agree, maybe, that if Israel would say anyone who passes the border illegally, he's being shot. Okay. That might be a problem if you think that we have a right for life and you are killing everyone who's coming. That's a problem, right? But Israelis' laws are more humane and much more easier on the illegal immigrants than most countries. Right. And still, the Supreme Court did not allow it and said it's unconstitutional based on who knows. And again, it was. And the sad thing is that the appeals, all these appeals to the Supreme Court, were funded by people from Europe, by countries from Europe, and basically they had their the governments in Europe had the interest of Israel serving as a buffer, because every immigrant from Africa that comes and stops in Israel do not arrive to Europe. So they paid NGOs in Israel to petition the court repeatedly, and disrupting Israeli immigration policies, so they wouldn't have to deal with the problems. So it's a cynical world that we can live with when we are talking about foreign relations. We know that foreign relations sometimes have some cynicism in it, but you don't allow a foreign country to intervene in your justice system in order to disrupt your elected government policy, and that's what happened here.
So I want to come back to that point, but I want to before that, I wanted to stay with the illegal migrant situation, because if I'm not mistaken, and forgive me if I'm going in this direction, if you don't want to deal with it, tell me. I think it was just last week or two, jumping to America, a federal court in America overruled I don't know whether it was a law or an executive order by President Trump, allowing cities or states not to have to take in illegal migrants. If you're not familiar, we won't talk about it.
Again, I'm not. And again, you have to remember, in the U.S., it's also a problem that the courts, lower courts, higher courts, disrupt governmental policy. It happens, but there it's very clear who can appeal to which courts. You cannot, you need to have a legal standing in order to appeal. You need to have a real case, not theoretical.
Right, here in Israel, anyone can just decide to bring a case to the Supreme Court.
And if for some reason someone in the Supreme Court thinks that it's in the Constitution to prevent, you have a mechanism to even change the constitution. It doesn't happen a lot, but there is a way to change the constitution. When you have a made-up constitution that the court
Israel does not have a constitution. We just have basic laws.
And the courts just invent stuff as they go. You cannot change something that is not written. You cannot have a mechanism to change the minds of the judges. And even now, when the Israeli Knesset added a basic law
I was going to go there, yeah.
on Israel as a nation state of
law.
the Jewish people, which is a basic law that passed in 61 majority. Just remember, the old basic laws passed in 32 Knesset members. It's never passed in majority.
Again, Israel's Knesset is 120 parliament members, and for a law to pass, usually you need a majority. You just need a regular majority. So the first basic laws that passed 20 some odd years ago were passed just with
32 to 21, for example.
Okay, and now, for whatever reason, they are.
It's not. You don't have to.
You don't have
but
to.
But the Knesset wanted to make sure that the Supreme Court will understand that this basic law is serious. So they passed it in 61 votes in all three readings. It's not only one reading.
Right.
All three readings passed with 61 votes.
And even with that,
the Supreme Court has an 11 judges panel in Israel. It's not all the judges sits in all the cases. 11 judges panel, which means a big panel in the Supreme Court that wants to debate the issue. Is
the legality of the nation-state law.
Is the nation-state law legal? Now, according to what standard? If you look, and that's what the court said for all those years, that the basic laws are basically part of Israeli constitution. And so just imagine the Supreme Court of the U.S. saying, oh, we don't like this part of the constitution, we will delete it because we don't like it. Based on what standard?
Yeah.
So
again, just to clarify what Simcha is saying, you have to understand. I mean, again, I cry. It's so clear the hypocrisy of the judicial establishment screams to high heavens. Here you go. All these years, Aaron Barak himself and all of his cronies have always said basic law can't be touched. Right? A basic law that's part of Israel's constitution can't be touched, can't be changed, nothing. All of a sudden, a nation-state law which makes Israel's national identity and symbols part of the law so that outside forces can't change the makeup of Israel's DNA as a Jewish state. All of a sudden, Aaron Barak and his cronies said, no, this law, even though it's a basic law, we can possibly make changes or even cut down because I don't know why.
And now they're starting to talk maybe the Declaration of Independence of Israel. Maybe that's the source. Okay, so the Declaration of Independence does not have the word democratic in it. It has the word Jewish again and again and again and again. So even that doesn't matter because they don't really look for legal documents. They are looking for a way to justify the rule of judges. And once you moved from the rule of law to the rule of judges, you have no democracy, you have no rule of law, and basically you have in Israel you don't have a working legal system. So even on the civil cases, people are waiting for decades for a ruling because there is you can't tell what the law is until it gets to the judge. You go to a lawyer, a civil lawyer, and tell them what will be the outcome of this case. Now, usually, good lawyer, can look at the laws and the precedents and say, according to the law and the precedents, the outcome is 80% will be this, 90% will be this. In Israel, you cannot do it. It's a lottery game every time you go to the court because judges can decide regardless of law, regardless of precedent, just because they want to. And that's why businesses, Israel doing business ranking around the world is going down because
they're always changing the laws. You don't know what the law is going to be.
Yeah.
Based on the whims of whatever judges are judging the case.
And now the natural gas in Israel that finally came out, it was delayed for almost 6 years just because of Israel lost billions and billions of shekels because of this, because the gas prices 6 years ago and 7 years ago were so much higher than it's today. So if the gas was ready to be sold 6 years ago,
it would have made
much more money for the state of Israel,
again,
and it was delayed by the Supreme Court, again
petitioned
by the left-wing organizations and left-wing ideology, just to disrupt Israeli policy from taking place.
By the way, with your permission, B'Shem Amro, I love that term you used before. I never heard it before. I'm going to use it also. It's not the law. It's not the rule of law. It's the rule of judges, emphasizing that it's the individual judges based on their own value system making legal decisions, not based on any law.
And people also, there are many lies, small lies or big lies that the justice system in Israel tells the Israeli public and around the world, trying to claim, oh, that's not so bad. One of them is we did not cancel so many laws. That's one big lie, because you don't even count the laws that were never enacted in the first place because of the threats of
right, like I said, attorney generals of ministry, they basically tell the minister, oh, you want to bring that law to the floor? Sorry, I'm not going to approve it. I won't let you take it. And
because
even if
Bagash
you do,
won't approve it.
Right, Supreme Court will knock it down, and that stops laws from even getting to the Knesset floor.
And the second lie is they say, oh, the Supreme Court intervenes only in 4% of the cases, 5% of the cases, 3% of the cases. But people don't understand. I'll ask you a question. How many cases get to the American Supreme Court every year?
Very few.
How many?
I have no clue. 50.
60 to 100, that's the average. Okay, depends on the year. I think the one year was 200, like 40, 50 years ago, what was very rare. Usually it's between 60 and 100 cases.
All right, here we go.
How many cases in Israel?
Hundreds, maybe even thousands.
Try 10,000, 15,000. Yeah, it depends on the year.
Oh,
okay,
my God.
So if the Israeli court intervenes in 1% from 10,000 cases, how much is it? 100. It's more than more cases the court intervenes than the whole case, the cases that the Supreme Court of the U.S.
deals with totally,
not intervenes. So that's
in addition to other issues.
That it's 1%. If it's 4%, double the numbers 4 times. It's and even when the court does not say anything, just by the process can change the government decision, because the court hints, or the court says, I will delete this appeal if you will go back on your ideas, on your policy. So really the Supreme Court is involved in almost every little detail or aspect in Israeli policy. So when you go, and people go to the US, or people come to Israel, and they want to meet with a Knesset member, or they want to meet with a minister, what does a Knesset member or a minister can do? They are powerless. Usually they have less power than even the legal advisor of their ministry.
Right.
So that's a big problem.
So I want to focus on something which we touched upon. Most of the conversation has been about specifically the Supreme Court. We touched upon how attorney generals of government ministries are also part of the problem. Basically, instead of them just being advisors to the ministries and the ministers, they have basically usurped power and basically been the one to approve or disapprove anything a minister does. But can you go more into how it's an issue with the whole judicial system? You're also talking about the committee to choose judges, because on that committee you have a majority that are either part of the Supreme Court or owe their future to the judges, part of the Supreme Court, and other aspects also showing that it's a widespread issue of the judicial system and not just the Supreme Court.
Okay, so of course, as I spoke before on the civil cases, for example, in this, the fact that the Supreme Court deals with so many cases creates such a problem with all the lower courts in the civil cases and in the criminal cases.
How does it create problems for the lower courts?
Because if you want to appeal, you have to wait in line, because the court deals with so many issues that is not his business from the first place. So, for example, someone sat in jail waiting for his appeal to be heard and to be basically he was released, but he was sitting in jail for 6 years until his case was heard. And those 6 years, the court dealt 3 times with the immigration laws. which it shouldn't have in the first place,
Right.
and that took a lot of time, and a lot of judges were involved, and everyone wrote his dissertation on that. It was like 600 pages verdicts, and they have time for everything, but the small person who sits in jail and waiting for his appeal to be heard, right? So that's a big problem.
He gets screwed. Okay.
Yeah, of course. But also, as you said, okay, so again, another common reply I get, so choose better judges. If your judges are so bad, why do you keep appointing them? And people don't understand that in Israel, the mechanism for appointing judges at large, and also Supreme Court judges, is a committee of 9, and the majority of this committee is not elected officials. In the U.S., in the states, in many states, people elect their judges directly, right? You vote for the judge, but in the federal system, the president nominates, and then the Senate approves. That's basically in most countries around the world. There is a new research by Kohelet Policy Forum. We had a research a year ago on that, but a new research just recently by another organization, Kohelet Policy Forum. It shows that basically that's a system around the world. In Israel, the committee of 9 that have 3 Supreme Court judges, 2 members of the bar, which are usually made of the same ideology and profession, because they're lawyers, they want to be appointed to the Supreme Court in some time around their life, or to lower courts, so they are basically part of the same system.
Right, they owe their future to the other judges, so they don't want to necessarily vote against the other judges.
So there are 5, and then you have 2 ministers and 2 Knesset members, when usually one of the Knesset members is from the opposition, usually. So you have the majority of Israel, the majority of the elected officials represented in the committee of 9 by 3 people, and if you count the opposition, then all the elected officials in Israel, opposition and coalition, are 4 out of 9, which means, and for the best part of the last 70 years, even if all elected officials, left and right, objected to a certain appointment, he could be appointed to the Supreme Court, even if all the minister and the Knesset members say it's a crazy appointment, don't appoint him. No, he would be appointed. In 2007, they changed the law, and Baruch Hashem, we have a mutual veto. In order to appoint someone to the Supreme Court, you need 7 out of 9, which means the Supreme Court, 3 judges can block anyone who they don't want, but from the other hand, the elected officials can block someone if they don't want. So it's a little bit better than it used to be, but it's so much worse, and you have a veto of the current sitting legal justices. They can veto whoever comes and join their ranks, right? So basically, we have a self-duplicating, self-appointing Supreme Court.
Friend brings a friend system. Is it all right if I bring in Ruth Gavizon? Because she was someone, I think, from my little knowledge, people say that she is second to Aaron Barak in terms of a legal mind in Israel, or definitely up there. And she was denied, or she knew she'd be denied, and therefore
she was denied by Aaron Barak. Aaron Barak said, "I will not let her be appointed."
But she's more of a conservative-minded judge.
And he said because she has an agenda, she wants the court not to rule Israel. What a strange agenda! And he blocked her appointment. And
did he use that actual language?
Yeah.
She can't be appointed because she has an agenda.
Yeah.
That's his language.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court Justice, as if he does not have an agenda.
Of course he has.
Where is everyone screaming, well, you have an agenda. Well, you shouldn't be allowed to push your agenda. Why you, yes, and she not?
And he appointed all his friends, of course, and his minions that were continuing his legacy. And she was blocked. And he also, after a few years, he lied about it, of course, but there was evidence. Anyway, it's this system, and he appointed his wife to be in the work relations court to be the higher position. We have a small video on that by Meshilut that we showed how it was appointed. A friend brings a friend, as you said, a family member. It's like a small family, and they treat themselves as their family, and they don't let anyone in their marriage into their family. That's the terms that they are using. That's the way they behave in the Supreme Court. And that creates a big deficit in Israeli democracy. As we showed, it creates a problem in the housing market. It creates a problem when you talk about the identity of the state, nation-state law. It creates a problem who can go to the Knesset, yes or no. We are going to see in the following days that people that try to go into the Knesset and they are terror supporting, sometimes the court approves, usually the court approves people who supports actually acts of terror that support it, and they shouldn't be allowed in the Knesset according to the basic law of the Knesset, and the court allowed them and just say, oh, that's no, the law did not really mean that.
And again, someone from the side, again, the law, right? That's the most infuriating thing. There is a law on the books that defines who and who cannot serve as a Knesset member. And these, unfortunately, majority have been Arab Knesset members in one or all of the different Arab parties, including Balad, that, according to law, have gone against the law and therefore should not be able to serve. And the Knesset votes on it, and then it gets to this justice panel, and the justice panel totally disregards the law and allows them to be voted and part of the Knesset anyway.
You mentioned Balad, for example. The law says, the basic law of the Knesset says, if you are objecting the Jewish identity of the State of Israel, then you cannot run to the Knesset. Balad introduced a law canceling the law of return, meaning you here, if you see us in America, a law that allows you to come to Israel and become citizens because it's the Jewish state. The Balad wanted to cancel this law. Now that's the textbook example of what makes Israel a Jewish state. The law of returns, that Israel is the safe haven for every Jew around the world that is being prosecuted or harassed because he's Jew. He can come to Israel and we will accept him and he will become a citizen of Israel. That's basic aspect of Israel as a Jewish state. Balad introduced a law that wants to cancel it. That's a textbook to be disqualified from running to the Knesset. The court does not care. I will be very surprised. We'll hear this debate in the next few days. I will be very surprised if the court will do it. Now
You're referring to the
Hiba Yazbek, the Knesset member from Balad.
Right now, there is just giving some background. There is a Knesset member in this same party. I don't even know how to pronounce her name.
Hiba
Yazbek, a female Knesset member who has made posts on Facebook publicly praising terrorists for killing Jews, right? Out there, public. Since then, she's taken them down. Even Parliament Knesset members on the left have come out in support of her being denied the ability to serve as a Knesset member because it's just so blatant and out there. And it's going to be brought before the justices. And from what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone's saying they will be shocked. On the one hand, they would be shocked if the justices agreed to let her serve. On the other hand, they wouldn't be shocked because they're just going to be pushing the public's trust in them further down.
Yeah, and we have examples from the past that the court really allowed people that did even worse things than Hiba Yazbek serve in the Knesset. So I don't know if the court will have I don't even try to interpret what the court will do legally. I am trying.
It's not legal.
It's not legal.
It's not legal.
I am trying to maybe see if the court politically will be smart enough to disqualify Hiba Yazbek, and then he will have the excuse, oh, see, we disqualified her. Maybe it will be a first. It will be a first, and we have examples of Knesset members using their parliamentarian immunity for treason, for allowing missiles of the Hezbollah, showing them where to shoot, like crazy things, and the court allowed it. So I will be very surprised, based on the precedent of the Supreme Court, if they will disqualify Hiba Yazbek. But if they will do it only for political reasons. I don't think any other reason because they disregard the law without thinking twice.
Listen, I don't want to end this interview before asking you what the solution is. What are the solutions you're working on? But I have one more issue to deal with before we get to solutions.
Okay.
And that is the legal situation of Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. I have been saying for years that it is a witch hunt, that taking Bibi Netanyahu down is the culmination of a judicial coup. of Aaron Barak and all of his cronies celebrating, because that shows their ultimate success, taking down the strongest right-wing prime minister ever, even though I have my own issues about how right-wing he has been or held to be, but he's definitely been the strongest yet. Can you go more into detail, because I don't have all the details and there's so much detail, but on a high-level detail explaining what's really going on behind Netanyahu's legal cases?
Okay, so first we need to know that...
Is he really a criminal that deserves to be taken down as prime minister?
No.
Okay.
But the short answer is no. But the long answer is, I don't support the view that they are after him because he's right-wing. They're after him because they're after prime minister. Any prime minister. And Aaron Barak, you mentioned, started it in 1977 with Yitzhak Rabin.
Right.
It's now, because the public in Israel is mostly right-wing, and the elected officials are mostly right-wing in the past decade or two, then if you go after elected officials, you go after the right. That's true. But the idea is power to the judiciary, power to the legal system. And elected officials are disrupting the good order of things that power will be in the justice system. So the justice system made it a main mission to take down a prime minister. It's the big prize. Usually, when you go in criminal cases, you're looking for the biggest criminal, right? You know, what is a state evidence agreement goes for? State evidence, as you said, I am willing to even let you get away with murder. You go to someone in the mob and you tell him you murdered, right? But you murdered because someone else told you, right? The big crook is the head of the mafia, right? Admit, sign, will get you into the witness protection system, right? And will take down the big mobster, right? That's the idea behind state evidence. You see from the cases around Netanyahu that they didn't look for the big criminal. They looked for the prime minister. If we get the prime minister, doesn't matter how petty the claim is or isn't, that's the big prize.
Basically, they drew the target, and then afterwards they drew the
and you have you say 1,000, 2,000, and 4,000.
Right.
That's
they already know. I mean, I used to say that to be. Wait a second. If they're calling a case 1,000, 2,000, that means it's a system. They have a system in place already to build more cases. It's not like they have a case. Oh, let's take it all the way and take it down.
What number is missing?
Right.
What number is missing? 1,000, 2,000, 4,000. What number is missing?
Oh, 3,000.
3,000. 3,000 is the submarines.
That was the submarines that they built up to be the biggest.
The biggest.
Take him down.
And he's a traitor, right? He endangered Israel's security for
buying submarines from Germany, right? Like his own cronies got money. I don't know.
Buying submarines for Germany, allowing the Egypts to buy submarines, whatever. And they didn't find anything on him in those cases. But they signed the state evidence agreement with someone called Ganor. And you read the case, and you see that Ganor, by far, is the worst criminal in the case. And you never sign a state evidence agreement with the worst criminal. He was the one who allegedly, of course, he was the one who introduced the bribery. He was the one who got the bribery. Who got the money from it. And they signed a state evidence agreement with him. Why? Because they wanted to take down Netanyahu. That even in the best case, they didn't find even that, but even in the best case scenario, he would be like on the very low level involvement in this issue. And they were willing to allow someone who endangered Israeli security, who got bribery, who exposed Israeli secrets to the world, and everything, Ganor, allegedly, and they were willing to let him go if he will give them little dirt about Netanyahu. He didn't give them even that because there was nothing on Netanyahu. But that's the case. So you see from case 3,000, what was 1,000, 2,000, and 4,000 are all about. So that's like a big picture issue. In the small picture, you see 2,000 and 4,000 are talking about getting positive media. There is no precedent in the history of the democracies around the world. Someone is being prosecuted, politician, for wanting positive media. Positive media, that's the way democracy works. If I will tell you now, you have a media, right? You have audience. And you will say here online, you will say, listen, Netanyahu, if you will do good things, in my view, if you will take down Khan el-Ahmar, and if you will build a new settlement, I will sit here all day and praise you. And if you will do bad things from my point of view, I will sit here and bash you from dusk to dawn. That's bribery. There is a quid pro quo, right? You told him, if you will do this, I will do this. That's a bribery. Now, go to jail and he will go to jail because that's what you said. No, that's democracy. That's how free media works. That's not... So even if someone in the media told Netanyahu, you will do what I want and I will praise you, that's the way democracy works. You can say it's ugly, you can say it's not good, I think it's okay, but it doesn't matter. That's not criminal. And the whole idea behind those cases is they want to criminalize politics, because once you define positive media as a criminal act, you can put in jail every politician you want, right? If you can put in jail every politician you want, you're ruling the country.
But you know what's interesting? Because again, most of the established media in Israel is left or left-leaning journalists and editors, etc., etc. It wouldn't, if that would be set up as a precedent, it wouldn't just be the politicians pulled into courts and thrown into jail. It would be journalists who would be pulled, subpoenaed, and convicted and thrown into jail because they were part of the bribe as well. And you don't hear a peep out of any of the mainstream journalists saying, no way, because that kills their career, because they can't print anything without having 100% permission signed and sealed to make sure it's not bribery and no secret information. How do you know it's secret, or who gave it to you? Meaning it totally destroys the careers of journalists.
And in case 2000, one of the persons who are being prosecuted is Noni Moses. He is the publisher of Yediot Ahronot, the largest newspaper in Israel. I say when you read what he did, he's not a nice person. I wouldn't maybe invite him to my wedding because he's not a nice person, the way he behaves, the way he runs his businesses, okay? But I don't think he should... a publisher of a newspaper who is trying to use the power of the newspaper to influence policy, that's a fair game. I don't like the policy he tried to push forward, but that's a fair game. I don't think anyone will suspect that I have the same ideology as Noni Moses. Okay, but I don't think he should be prosecuted, not because of Netanyahu, that's what democracy is. So and everything around those cases and the way they threaten state witnesses and everything you touch in those cases is screaming coup. But again, it's not a coup against the right.
Interesting.
It's a coup against the public. It's a coup against the elected officials and what they represent. In Israel, they represent the right, which is a good thing.
Right. Well, going back to case 2000, and then we'll finish up and go to the solutions. If I'm not mistaken, here again, case 2000, for those who are not unfamiliar, it's about, that's Israel Hayom. That's the case of Israel Hayom, right? About prosecuting Netanyahu for bribing bribing Noni Moses in order to get positive coverage, so that then they would close down Yisrael Hayom.
He's not being prosecuted on bribery in this case because he never ever pushed forward the law. He just told Noni Moses that he might push forward the law just because he didn't want Noni Moses during election time
to go against him.
Right. That's like a breach of trust, because the person who threatened him and tried to blackmail him into pushing forward the law, and he did not tell him, no, I won't do it. That's a bribery. That's not a bribery. That's a breach of trust to the person who is in charge of bribery. It's crazy.
But it's just even more hypocrisy that I've been pointed out to, and I've been talking about, is that in that same case, you're talking about Eitan Kabel, you're talking about Yair Lapid, you're talking about left-wing politicians that supported taking down Yisrael Hayom, that they are not being, that cases against them, especially Eitan Kabel, there was a case against him that has more clear evidence of breach of trust,
of even bribery,
than the Netanyahu case, but the justices threw that case out.
Not the justices, the legal advisors, the prosecution.
The prosecution threw that case out. So again, to me, you see the hypocrisy, and here, based on an ideological agenda, we'll take a case with very few pieces of evidence to take
We
down.
want to take down Netanyahu. We don't care. That's the issue.
Right. We won't care about the
We
politics.
don't care about anything
thing.
else. We want to take down the sitting prime minister because that's the big prize. We're focused on the prize. We're not looking. We won't let you distract us. And just recently, just last week, it was discovered that usually, if the claim is that there was a bribery in the 4,000 case, there was a bribery that Bezek got a huge benefit. That was the saying. Netanyahu hurted everyone in Israel because we paid much more, and Bezek made billion shekels of profit because of these briberies. That was the claim, and it's very unusual when a company in Israel is gaining a billion shekels from bribery that they don't take the money in the civil. There is a
courts.
No. There is when someone is bribery, the government can take the money even without a long process, just by taking the money, putting a lien on the money immediately, because it's 1 billion shekels that apparently is supposed to be to the taxpayers' money. So why? And they didn't prosecute Bezek, which also very, very rare that you prosecute the head of Bezek, Alovich, and you don't prosecute the company. It's very rare. I don't know of any example of that. And I would think, why? Because if you would try to put this fake claims over Bezek, which is a multi-billion shekels organization, they will have all the lawyers in the world ruining your case immediately. But if you want to go after Netanyahu, you don't want this distraction. So you didn't prosecute the companies who gained billions of shekels, allegedly. So it's not really a case. That's what my view.
Wow. All right. So let's come to the end. Here we're talking solutions. Just again to frame it for everyone, based on everything we're talking about, we're referring to what's been going on in Israel. There's a judicial coup that's been taking on. One of the main pushers, if not the one who started it, was former Supreme Court Justice Minister Aaron Barak. And you're talking about an imbalance of powers, where the judicial branch of the Israeli governance has usurped powers of the legislative and the executive. So I'm framing the question this way: what, therefore, are the solutions you propose to allow for the rebalancing of the three branches of governance, so that we can go back to normalcy, where the public can have a trust once again in the judicial, that it's not about their own agendas, and we can have policies that we actually vote for when we're voting for parties.
So I think the most important one is to change the way we appoint judges. You need to change the way to have it more like in the U.S., combination of government of the government and the Knesset, not self-appointing, self-perpetuating court. I think it's one major important change that you need to introduce to the Israeli system. You need to have very clear that if you don't have legal standing, you cannot go to the court, and that will prevent all these problems that we said, 15,000 or 10,000 cases every year going to the Supreme Court. It will only
if you're connected to the case can you appeal to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and that's a very major difference. You need to have very specific rules when the court can cancel Knesset laws. I think that the best solution is the court will never be able to cancel Knesset laws. Some people would say, oh, maybe in these cases, but then the Knesset can override it, what you call Piskat Ha'idlibut, an override mechanism. I prefer no, because the Court of Israel is not elected and is not appointed by elected officials. The current court, it's not. It has, and we don't have a written constitution, and we don't have a mechanism to change the constitution. I don't think it makes sense to let the court change the laws to be the legislator. So that's another big change. You need to empower the Knesset. You need to give the Knesset more power and the government more power when you're talking about legal advisors. You need to separate the roles of the legal advisor. The legal advisor in Israel is the most strong entity in the democratic world. He is he can block the government from getting legal advisory. He can block the government from getting legal representation. He can just decide he's not enforcing laws. Whatever. He can do whatever he wants. You need to separate the roles and have more governability in the government and in the Knesset. The Knesset will be able to enact laws that the public sees fit, and the government can apply policy that the public see fit. And the legal advisor will be, as their name suggests, legal
just
advisors and not legal deciders or legal rulers. So we have more, but I think if you introduce those 3 or 4 major changes, the others are more small points which can change a lot, but smaller. Separation of power of the legal advisor, changing the way you appoint judges, and disqualifying certain issues from getting even to the court as it goes around the world. Trying to make it Israeli system where we are the smartest people in the world, but with our system is by far not the smartest system.
So let me just following up on that. We have been the closest ever to actually trying to enact some of those changes. We had Ayel Shaked as Justice Minister, I believe the most successful Justice Minister historically that I can think of in terms of actually making changes in the right direction. I believe the major changes she succeeded in making were persona changes of getting more conservative justices in the system, working with the system, not breaking the rules or being allowed to make the necessary changes. Now we have Amir Ohana certainly trying to make changes that he can in a this temporary government, so he doesn't have all the powers. How close are we to coming to actually having the legislative and executive support to actually come forward and have those changes? Because Bibi has not allowed those changes to be made up until now. The question is, will he now?
Yeah, okay. So before you asked about Netanyahu's cases, Netanyahu is, I don't think he's guilty in what they're charging him with, but he's definitely guilty of not changing the system. He's definitely guilty of blocking anyone else trying to change the system. Maybe now he will be less. I don't believe he will be the leader of the change. That's my personal view. But I believe he might block a little less. And there may be some changes if we have in the next election 61 majority in the Knesset that support those changes. And we have a working government, which we don't have for the last. And we have to remember this re-election and re-election after re-election that we have in Israel is also court-made.
I've spoken at that. Yes, go for it.
It's also court-made. So the court basically weakened the systems, weakened the Knesset, weakened the government, and then you don't have anyone who stand up against it. Because we have, going now to the third election, one of the main issues is the draft law. The draft law that the Knesset solved this issue, which is a problem, which is a problematic issue. Whenever you want to look at it, the clash between the ultra-Orthodox and the army and whatever, everything is a mess there. But the Knesset solved 3 times. We had laws solving this issue, and 3 times the court canceled the solution that the Knesset arrived, throwing back this hot potato into this mess of politics and creating instability in the Knesset, going to election after election after election, and the tension you have now between Lieberman and the ultra-Orthodox, and the tension it brings to the street, and the hatred, and everything is court-made. Right. You have to understand that the court method of operating is making you weak, so you won't be able to object it. That's the way. That's why they prosecute the elected officials. That's why they keep bringing these problematic issues back and back to the Knesset, and the Knesset is being teared down by conflicts, right, and not getting to the agreement and to the policies that the people of Israel want.
Right. Well, this is Simcha. Thank you so much for your insight. I don't know how many of the people watching understand how critical this issue is. I mean, Simcha touched upon it, but just to sum up, just so you understand, again, Simcha was just referring to the draft law. You see the social tension in Israel between the ultra-Orthodox and secular society in terms of army. And again, Parliament has solved this issue a number of times. The reason it is still a problem, the reason it is getting worse of a problem, is the fault of the Supreme Court for not allowing legislative solutions to be implemented. They always knock down the laws. We spoke about the illegal migrant issue. South Tel Aviv and other cities in Israel have been flooded with illegal migrants that are not asylum seekers, totally ruining the life of these low socioeconomic communities. People suffering, and the reason for these problems and the suffering is at the footstep of the Supreme Court, because the legislative executive have tried to solve those problems, and the Supreme Court has stopped it. I'm a soldier. I serve reserve duty. I could also tell you on the defense level, as a soldier, the rules of engagement become harsher and harsher in order to shoot. Why? Because of the judicial. Why is the judicial getting involved of when a soldier should be able to shoot? But that is what's happening, and not just at the Supreme Court level, even though cases are brought there, but also the justice attorney generals in the army are there from that same camp, and making it harder and harder for us to be able to defend ourselves, whether me as my own standing as a soldier with my gun, or as a unit, and then also in warfare. They've just totally overtaken the agenda in terms of defense, where even our army is afraid of what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do when we're trying to defend Israeli citizens, which don't only include Jews, they include Muslims, Christians, atheists, Buddhists, and the illegal migrants who also could be shot on as well. So one thing after another, the stumbling block to moving Israel forward is the Supreme Court that tries to make itself the torch of justice, where in a sense, and again, forgive me if these are my words and not yours, they are a torch of injustice, and in the name of law, abusing the justice in their hands to create injustice. And that's why the work of what Simcha is doing is so important. The work of this organization is so important. And again, it's not about neutering the judicial system. It's about rebalancing, so that, again, anyone who understands American politics, three branches: executive, legislative, judicial. Each one has its powers. Each one is it has the rules of when they're able to get involved, when not. And there is a balancing act involved. And in Israel, they have usurped the powers. The judicial has usurped the power of the legislative and executive, and there is no balance, and that's why we have these issues. So, Simcha, thank you so much for all the wonderful work you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. And guys, that's why you have to vote for the right parties that will enact the policies necessary to bring these changes, so that we have a rebalancing and to stop this injustice being done in the name of justice by the justice system. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for watching. Signing off from the eternal and undivided capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem, in our eternal and ancestral homeland. Take care.